To discuss the difficulty of identifying and disrupting lone wolf attacks are David Gartenstein-Ross, a senior fellow with the Foundation for Defense of Democracies, and CNN terror analyst Paul Cruikshank. Thank you both for being here. Paul, let me start with you. This guy had a criminal record. He was well known to authorities. Was this an intelligence failure?
Well, to some degrees, yes. I mean, 7 years ago, he was writing all these letters to the families of Australian servicemen who were killed in action. Very, very radical letters back in 2007. So he's been doing this for some time. He's been on the radar screen for some time. Just last month, he pledged allegiance to the head of ISIS, Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi, online. So this is a guy with some form when it comes to radical extremism.
And yet, I guess, David, what do you do until he actually carries out? I mean, you see him in these clips holding up, sandwich boards on the street. He looks like just a crackpot.
Yeah, that's one of the difficulties of going after lone wolf terrorists, that you can't conspire with yourself, and so they have to have done something illegal to prosecute them for an act of terrorism. But there's two things you can do that the United States has utilized, one of which is sting operations, basically see what somebody's intentions are by giving them the opportunity to act out a fantasy scenario. Controversial, but they do deal with the problem. The second thing is utilizing other pegs that you have, kind of an Al Capone style of policing. Al Capone, of course, was a notorious bootlegger. He killed people, but he was ultimately convicted of tax evasion. And in this case, there might have been pegs like the immigration system, especially given the assault charges and the murder charge against him.
Right. I would think that those could have been used. Then, Paul, also, I would think in this day and age of social media and the proliferation of really powerful propaganda by these terrorist groups online, it's very difficult to go after these lone wolves. You have instructions in Inspire magazine on how to build a bomb. You have all these slick videos from ISIS. It must make it much more complicated. That's
right. You don't necessarily need to go to a training camp anymore to get the kind of information you might need to build explosive devices. You can just go and buy a weapon. One big question will be, how did this guy manage to get hold of a weapon?
That's right,
in Australia? He was
banned
on the radar screen of the intelligence services there. That's one of the biggest questions today.
And guns were banned in Australia, of course. What lesson can we learn, David? Is there anything we can see in this instance in Sydney? I know it's early yet, that American intelligence officials or national security officials can say, this is what we need to do to prevent that from happening here?
I think one of the most important things I'd look at is not just this attack, but the pattern of attacks that have some sort of ISIS inspiration this year. If you count the beheading in Oklahoma, there's 6 of them. The 2 in Canada, the New York City axe attack, this attack among them. And in general, there's about, over the past decade, there's been about 7.2 lone wolf attacks for all kinds of lone wolf terrorism across 15 different Western states. This year, there's been 6 for ISIS-inspired lone wolf terrorism alone. I think one lesson is that social media, in my view, is effective in taking that group function, which normally exists in terrorism, that is people egging each other on, and it can apply to lone wolves. And so my concern, and I think what law enforcement should have in mind, is that the pattern of lone wolves and the pace of them may be increasing.
All right, David, Paul, thank you so much. Appreciate it.